Hello guys, finally it's happening in the southeast too. Biafra Liberation Army have said they are no longer taking this. All checkpoints in Biafra land should be gone. Nigerians, there is fire on the mountain. This video you're about to watch will make you to understand what is happening currently in Biafra land. Nigerian soldiers, Nigerian police, every one of them is on the run. Let me leave you to watch the video and see things yourself. Thank you.
Biafra Liberation Army commanders have destroyed all Nigerian army and police illegal checkpoints in all Biafra land. This news update also highlights a case of police brutality and systemic issues in Nigeria, particularly within the southeastern region of Nigeria, now referred to as the United State of Biafra. An eyewitness narrates an emotional encounter with alleged police misconduct, describing it as an unjust and traumatic experience. He talks about the unlawful detention and kidnapping of individuals, possibly youth, by the Nigerian police in the southeast. He also talks about the destruction of property, particularly a car valued at 27 million naira. He also talks about the excessive use of force, with claims that someone was shot and killed by the Nigerian police. This news update depicts police harassment, targeting civilians, especially young people driving expensive cars in the southeast. The Nigerian police are accused of acting like aggressors rather than protectors, engaging in unjust treatment and failing to uphold professionalism. He expresses frustration over discrimination against the southeastern region of Nigeria, often called Biafran land. There is a perception that the situation is worse in the southeast compared to northern Nigeria, suggesting systemic bias. Young people in the southeast are treated as criminals by default, according to the Eyewitness. He criticizes the Nigerian police force for their lack of proper training and professionalism. He also criticizes the Nigerian government and politicians for ignoring the plight of civilians and youth. He laments the lack of action from community elders and leaders in addressing police brutality and ensuring justice. The emotional toll on victims and their families is highlighted, with visuals of crying siblings and destroyed property. In the southeast, there is a climate of fear and distrust between civilians and law enforcement in the region. It is due to this insecurity, marginalization, unlawful brutality and harassment of Igbos in the southeast that the Biafra Liberation Army vow to make sure that all Nigeria security forces leave Biafra land. This is the reason behind the brutal war going on between the Biafra Liberation Army and the Nigeria Army. Right now, the Biafra Liberation Army, led by their commanders, have destroyed all Nigerian army and police illegal checkpoints in all Biafran land, and they have issued a stern warning to the Nigerian security forces to leave Biafra land with immediate effect. Let me tell you a story. It's about a place many of you might have heard of, a land in southeastern Nigeria often referred to as Biafran land. It's a region steeped in history, culture and resilience, but also a place that has faced its fair share of struggles. This story isn't just about the people or the land. It's about a conflict that has taken a dramatic turn, led by a group called the Biafra Liberation Army. What they're doing and why they're doing it is something that deserves to be told with care and clarity. Imagine you're a young man driving home after a long day. You're in your car, a car you've worked hard to own, a car you're proud of. For many people, a car isn't just a vehicle, it's a symbol of success, of independence, of dreams realized. Now imagine that car being smashed to pieces, its windshield shattered, its frame dented beyond recognition. Not because of an accident, but because someone, a person supposed to protect you, decided it should be destroyed. This is the reality for many in Biafran land. One man, whose name I'll call Emmanuel for this story, found himself in this exact situation. He woke up one morning to chaos outside his home. His family was crying, their voices echoing through the walls like a chorus of heartbreak. His car, worth a staggering 27 million naira, was a wreck. And the people responsible? Members of the Nigerian police. They weren't there to help. They were there as aggressors, enforcing their presence with the weight of authority, but without justice or compassion. Emmanuel wasn't the only one affected that day. In the same neighborhood, another young man was taken, kidnapped, as some would say, right off the streets. The term arrest doesn't seem to fit when there's no explanation, no charges, no due process. It's an act that leaves families torn apart and communities on edge, wondering who will be next. This isn't a one-time event. It's part of a larger pattern, one that has been unfolding for years in southeastern Nigeria. Let me take you back to another day, another story. This time it was a young woman, a newlywed, full of hope and plans for the future. She was walking home when she found herself in the middle of a confrontation between local civilians and Nigerian security forces. She didn't make it home that day. She became another name on the growing list of casualties in a conflict that has no end in sight. Her family's grief is indescribable, a pain that lingers long after the funeral flowers have wilted. The Nigerian police and army often set up checkpoints throughout the southeast. Ostensibly, these are meant to maintain security, to keep people safe. But for many, these checkpoints are anything but reassuring. They're places where harassment is common, where young people are targeted simply for looking a certain way or driving certain cars. Success in these parts often comes with a heavy price, a price that's paid in fear, in bribes, in shattered windshields and broken lives. One eyewitness, a man named Ifeanyi, spoke about what he had seen. His voice was steady, but you could hear the frustration, the anger, the exhaustion. "It's like we're not even human to them," he said. You drive a nice car, and suddenly you're a suspect. You're young and doing well, and they assume you must be a criminal. Why? Why is success a crime in Biafran land? Ifeanyi's question is one that echoes throughout the southeast. Why does it seem like this region is treated differently from the rest of Nigeria? Why are its people subjected to such disproportionate scrutiny and violence? The answer for many lies in a deep-seated bias that dates back decades to a time when Biafran land was embroiled in a civil war that left scars on both sides. Those scars never fully healed, and they're visible today in the way the region is policed, in the way its people are treated. The Biafra Liberation Army says they've had enough. This group, led by commanders who remain largely anonymous for their safety, has made it their mission to dismantle every illegal checkpoint in Biafran land. They see these checkpoints not as symbols of security, but as tools of oppression. And so one by one they've been taking them down, issuing warnings to Nigerian security forces to leave the region. It's not just about the checkpoints, though. It's about what they represent. For the Biafra Liberation Army, this is a fight for dignity, for autonomy, for a future where the people of Biafran land can live without fear. And they're not just fighting with words. They're using actions, bold and some would say dangerous, to make their point. One of their commanders, a man known locally as Commander Eze, spoke about their mission in a rare interview. "We are not doing this for ourselves," he said. "We're doing it for our children, for the next generation. They deserve to grow up in a place where they don't have to look over their shoulders every time they leave the house. They deserve better than what we've had." But actions like these come with consequences. The Nigerian army has responded with force, leading to clashes that have claimed lives on both sides. Civilians often find themselves caught in the crossfire, their homes and businesses destroyed, their lives upended. It's a cycle of violence that shows no signs of stopping, and the emotional toll is immense. One mother, whose son was killed in a skirmish between the Biafra Liberation Army and Nigerian forces, spoke through tears. "He was just a boy," she said. "He didn't even know what was happening. He was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and now he's gone. How do I explain this to his younger siblings? How do I move on from this?" Her story is not unique. Across Biafran land, Families are mourning loved ones lost to a conflict they didn't choose. The pain is palpable, the grief raw and unfiltered. And yet there's also a sense of determination, a refusal to let these losses be in vain. The Biafra Liberation Army has vowed to continue their fight, no matter the cost. They've issued statements warning that they will destroy any remaining checkpoints and that Nigerian security forces must leave the region immediately. For them, this isn't just a battle. It's a war for survival, for identity, for freedom. And so, the story of Biafran land continues to unfold. It's a story of struggle and resilience, of pain and hope. It's a story that deserves to be told, not just in headlines or sound bites, but in the voices of the people who live it every day. Emmanuel, Ifeanyi, the young woman who never made it home, the grieving mother. They're not just names. They're people with dreams, with families, with stories that matter. And as long as their voices are heard, as long as their stories are told, there's hope that one day things will change. The story of Biafran land cannot be confined to a single chapter or a singular perspective. It is a deeply woven tapestry of shared experiences, hardship, and an unyielding desire for justice. As Emmanuel's story spread throughout his community, it sparked conversations among neighbors, friends, and even strangers who had suffered in similar ways. His broken car, shattered dreams, and anguished family became symbols of a greater struggle, one that resonated across the southeastern region of Nigeria. Among those who heard Emmanuel's story was Chiamaka, a schoolteacher in her late 20s. Chiamaka had spent her life trying to create a better future for her students. Every morning she walked several kilometers to her classroom, where she taught mathematics to bright-eyed children who dreamed of becoming doctors, engineers, and scientists. But even in the classroom, the weight of the conflict outside seeped in. Some of her students came to school with stories of their fathers being detained at checkpoints, or their brothers being harassed while running errands. Chiamaka herself had a close encounter with the harsh reality of the checkpoints. On her way home from a wedding, dressed in her finest attire, she was stopped by a group of heavily armed officers. Despite having all her identification documents in order, she was interrogated, humiliated, and made to feel like a criminal. "Why do you think you're better than others?" one officer sneered as he rifled through her bag, searching for something, anything, that could justify their actions. She had nothing to hide, but that didn't matter. She returned home shaken, her joy from the celebration stolen by the encounter. These stories multiplied. They were whispered in marketplaces, recounted at family gatherings, and shared on social media platforms. People began to document the harassment and brutality, using their phones to capture videos of officers destroying property, extorting bribes, and in some cases, using deadly force. One such video showed a man named Namdi kneeling in the dirt, his hands raised as a group of officers surrounded him. "What have I done?" he asked repeatedly, his voice trembling. There was no answer, only laughter from the officers as they demanded money he didn't have. The tipping point came when another video went viral. It showed a young man, barely in his 20s, being dragged from his car at a checkpoint. The car was a modest vehicle, nothing flashy or extravagant, but it was enough to make him a target. The video captured the moment he was shoved to the ground, his cries for help drowned out by the shouts of the officers. Within hours, the video had been shared thousands of times, sparking outrage not just in Biafran land, but across Nigeria and beyond. The Biafra Liberation Army took notice. Their leaders held an emergency meeting in a hidden location, deep in the forests of the southeast. Commander Eze spoke passionately, his voice carrying the weight of the people's suffering. "We cannot let this continue," he said, addressing a room filled with men and women who had dedicated their lives to the cause. "Every checkpoint is a symbol of their oppression. Every officer who harasses our people is an enemy of our freedom. We must act." The commanders strategized, identifying the most notorious checkpoints and planning coordinated efforts to dismantle them. The Biafra Liberation Army, wanted the Nigerian government and its security forces to understand that their actions would no longer be tolerated.
So guys, you've all watched the video. You see what is happening in the southeast. Honestly, this is really terrible. So guys, I'm dropping it here. Kindly drop your comments below in the comment section. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up. This is Prospect Channels TV. Please share this video, let it go viral so that Nigerians will understand what is really happening today in this country. Thank you and bye for now.